welcome to this very special episode of the Maz's Musings podcast. Yes, of course, we are going to be talking about Star Wars with May the 4th coming up, and that's always special. But this week, we are tying into the May the 4th theme something else that is very special that happens in May, and that is National Foster Care Month. Now, as a former foster parent and someone who's on the board of directors for a nonprofit that supports and empowers foster families, I have some firsthand understanding and knowledge and really appreciation for the challenges that the children in the system face, the families, and even the system itself, what it faces. And I thought that this would be a great opportunity to take some of the elements in Star Wars that focus very much on the themes of found family and chosen family and use those to highlight this very important issue and month. Now, of course, it's important to support our foster children and foster families year round, but especially when there is a concerted effort to raise awareness, I felt like it was really appropriate to use this venue to lend my voice to that. So, we're going to have some fun and we're going to explore some different ways that the idea of fostering or adoption is really prevalent in a lot of different Star Wars stories, and really how the sense of family and identifying what a family is really changes. And the Star Wars universe is really one of those places where you see a lot of different kinds of families. And of course, I think that's one of the things that helps Star Wars resonate with so many different people and different generations. People can identify with it. It's one of the reasons why it's had the staying power that it has. So that is going to be our topic for this week. But of course, before we get into that, I do want to mention that this is a Star Wars episode, which now, these days, by default, makes it a Disney episode. So we are going to bypass the Mazza's Mickey Minute this week. Of course, one thing we never want to bypass is the opportunity for a laugh. So here is Megan with her joke of the week. Hi, Megan.
Hi.
Do you have a joke for us today?
Yes.
Let's hear it.
Why did the girl throw a stick of butter?
I don't know. Why did a girl throw a stick of butter?
She wanted to see a butterfly. Cuckoo bananas joke, right?
Cuckoo bananas joke. All right. Well, Megan has entertained us once again. And another way to entertain yourselves is, of course, to take a vacation. And who better to help you with that entertainment than We Do Travel Right? We Do Travel Right will offer you that concierge level service with the one-on-one attention from an agent. And that agent will be able to walk you through everything that you need to understand about your vacation and will really help tailor the vacation to you by getting to know you and what you and your family find important. That agent also has the power of the dining team behind them who will help you get those hard to get reservations. And that agent can also help you with the ins and outs of the app, ins and outs of getting around the parks and getting around the resorts. It really is kind of one-stop shopping for your Disney vacation planning. And the best thing about it is it's free. That's right. Whether you are going to Disney or if you're going to Universal or on a cruise or an all-inclusive, all of these places already build the use of an agent into their pricing. So they pay, We Do Travel Right for you. So if you're paying for the use of an agent and not using the agent, well, you're just kind of throwing money away, aren't you? So if you are ready to check out We Do Travel Right, you can fill out the form to get a free, obligation-free quote. So visit wedotravelright.com/Mazza. That's wedotravelright.com/MAZA and get your next magical vacation started today. All right, now it is time to get into our main topic. Now, of course, as I said, Star Wars has themes of family and found family and really foster and adoption through so many of its stories, really from the very beginning. And I think that there's really no better place to start with this than with Luke and Leia. Obviously, when we meet Luke, he's already living with his aunt and uncle who have been raising him. And we don't get much into Leia's backstory until you start getting into the prequels and such. And so only a little bit is known about her family early in the saga. But as Star Wars has developed into a larger thing, we've found much, much more about the relationship with her parents, the Organas, and also more about the relationship that Luke has with Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru. So at this point in the original, A New Hope, as they call it now, at this point, we meet Luke Skywalker for the first time, and his uncle is kind of coming off as like this callous figure. And Luke doesn't really understand why he's so restrictive. And I think, especially now with the knowledge that we have of the character of Owen, Owen is just really concerned about Luke's future. And he's concerned about his safety. That is his number one concern. In the original Star Wars, that whole back and forth that they have at the dinner table where we first get a look at Blue Milk, it's all about Luke going to the academy. And if we really think about that, it really had little to do with Owen wanting to keep Luke on for another season because he needed the help. And I think Luke kind of saw through that with his comment about how there's enough droids. But I think Owen was using that as the excuse to keep him on the farm, to keep him safe. Owen thought that that was the way to shield Luke. And I think that Owen took his charge of keeping Luke safe very, very seriously. And of course, now we have, especially with the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, I think a deeper appreciation of what that commitment was. And certainly there's a scene in the finale of that show that I think really speaks to this. And it resonates with audiences generally, but I think especially if you're a foster parent, this hits home. It hits really close to home.
You really love the boy. Like he's your own.
He is my own.
That in and of itself, I think, really wraps up Owen's and Beru's feelings on how they view Luke. Luke is their son. Maybe not in name, but in every other way. And they treat him and protect him as such. I think it's a really powerful moment, especially when you look at what we previously knew about the relationship between Luke and Owen. I think it's really poignant in the development and the deeper look into that character and that relationship. And I absolutely love it. Now, as far as Leia goes, of course, we don't know anything about her family when Alderaan is destroyed. We get to know more about her family as the universe has expanded. Now, we meet Bail Organa in the prequels, and we see how Leia becomes part of the Organa family at the end of Revenge of the Sith. But I think that there's another great development here that came out of the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, where we got a deeper sense of the Organa family. And this isn't just somebody that they're taking care of. The Organas love Leia. Leia is their daughter. The exact same way that Owen and Beru care for Luke and view Luke as their son, the same kind of feelings here are evoked by the Organas. Though they do have different ways of showing it. They have different expectations for Leia as their daughter, which is not uncommon for parents generally, I think. But there's a scene early on in the Obi-Wan Kenobi series that really drives that home. And I think that this is something that I think that some kids, especially the foster children, the adoptive children, it's something that I think that they sometimes maybe struggle with, especially if they've known their life with another family. Now Leia didn't, but the fact that she is not a blood Organa is something that is brought up already.
This is your future, Leia. In a few years, you'll be off to university, then junior Senate.
The Senate's boring. It's people in itchy clothes arguing.
Well, it may seem so.
I don't want to be a senator.
Which is why you'll probably be one of the best.
Not even a real Organa.
Don't ever say that. You are a child. You are an Organa in every way.
So you see these interactions or these moments that I think are really poignant and really illustrate that these are their children. It brings a new appreciation, not just their commitment to keep these kids safe, but the deep love that they have for them. And I think that that's something for all of us who are parents in whatever form. We have that emotional bond with our kids. That obviously there is the instinct to keep them safe, but it goes much deeper than that. It is that unconditional love that I think we're seeing evoked effectively in this series from those characters. I think that the Obi-Wan series illustrated these foster and adoptive scenarios in a true and emotional way, which is very, very cool. Now, some people have drawn some parallels between the Jedi and the younglings, and and in a broader sense. And that's a little bit muddied because of the manner in which Jedi come by the apprentices and their younglings. But I think there is truth to that in the way that Jedi masters individually care for their apprentices and the relationships and the bonds that they form. The whole master and apprentice thing on the surface may look much like it sounds, but if you look at the deeper connections that many of these Jedi have with their Padawans, especially you look at Order 66, and really actually look past Order 66. When you look into the later Star Wars stories, the Force users and the Jedi that are in these later stories are predominantly younger. They are the younglings who have survived Order 66. And it's clear that as Padawans, as younglings, they likely were not equipped to survive that assault on their own. And you see it at times, like Kanan Jarrus's Jedi Master. It's clear that their masters sacrificed themselves so that the younglings, so the Padawans could escape. You see it with even in The Mandalorian, where somebody comes to rescue Grogu, putting themselves at risk. So it's clear that there is much more of a connection, and that paternal willingness to sacrifice for your child, paternal, maternal, whatever it is, it's a very parental feeling. It's a very parental instinct. So I think that really rings true. I also think that you look at these relationships, and there is none that really personifies the love between a master and a Padawan than Obi-Wan and Anakin. And that one is even a little bit trickier, because Obi-Wan and Anakin also have this brotherly kind of relationship, which isn't unlike one of those relationships where a older sibling has to take charge and care for their younger siblings. Another real life, real world scenario. They both lost Qui-Gon Jinn, who was both of their kind of paternal figure. And so they kind of clung to each other. And so in Revenge of the Sith, there's a moment where you can really see the pride that Obi-Wan has in Anakin. And I think that also helps make everything even that much more heartbreaking at the end of that movie. But here's that first thing, that first interaction between Anakin and Obi-Wan, where it's really clear that there's some fatherly, older brotherly pride that Obi-Wan has for Anakin.
You are strong and wise, Anakin, and I am very proud of you. I have trained you since you were a small boy. I have taught you everything I know, and you have become a far greater Jedi than I could ever hope to be. But be patient, Anakin. It will not be long before the Council makes you a Jedi Master.
Obi-Wan, may the Force be with you.
Goodbye, old friend. May the Force be with you.
So of course there's that, and then you get to the end of this movie, and well, let's back up. You look at that. That's the last time that Obi-Wan talks to Anakin. Even though he's addressing him as Anakin later on, Anakin at that point is Darth Vader. And so that makes things that much more heart-wrenching for Obi-Wan when he has to face Darth Vader, when he has to face Anakin that last time in Revenge of the Sith.
You were my brother, Anakin! I loved you!
So that really kind of dives into that, what I was talking about, kind of that brotherly aspect to it. Obviously he comes out right out and says it, which kind of confirms what we see through the development of these two characters through that prequel series. And you can see and feel the heartbreak that Anakin, that boy that he raised, has essentially died. That person that he knew doesn't exist anymore. And it tears him apart. And it's in the Obi-Wan series that becomes even more of a thing. You can see the guilt that he feels, the immense weight of what he feels to be such a failure. He feels this immense feeling that he let Anakin down. And I think that that's something else that we as parents, we're always afraid of letting down our children. Of as much as we try to lead them down the right path, there is that feeling that, are we doing this right? And is this what we're doing that's best? And what you're looking at is someone who raised somebody who's now just looking at it like, I didn't do this right. And it costs this person everything that they were. So I think that that's really profound. And there's a lot of paternal elements to that. And of course, the adoption theme is one that's really strong in The Mandalorian. I mean, you look at the Mandalorian culture, and it's largely based on this concept of foundlings, and taking in children that into their society that have either been lost or have been rescued. So it's really a societal norm for them, and foster and adoption is a societal norm for the Mandalorians. So obviously, over the course of the series The Mandalorian, you watch that relationship between Din Djarin and Grogu grow, and it's really cool to watch that happen, especially because Grogu can't speak. But even with Grogu not speaking and the Mandalorian wearing a helmet and having his face covered through 99% of this, they are still able to establish that connection and illustrate that connection and illustrate how much the Mandalorian cares for Grogu and how much Grogu cares for the Mandalorian. There's obviously that scene where he says goodbye to Grogu when Grogu goes with Luke Skywalker, that moment without the helmet. But even before that, you know, Din Djarin is trying to do his best. He's really trying to feel out what this taking care of somebody else and caring for them really is all about. And that's something that I think any new parent is just like, oh my God, what, what are we doing here? Am I doing this right? And he's really trying to look out for what what he thinks is best for Grogu without actually necessarily knowing what that is. So that's a real, whether you're talking about a foster situation or a situation with a biological child, I think that's something that all parents can relate to in a big way. I can tell you the one thing that is probably the most unrealistic thing in Star Wars is how quickly the Mandalorian is able to find a babysitter for Grogu. Wherever he goes, somebody's just willing to watch him. And granted, he's super cute, but still. That also a little bit of an aside here, a tangent. But that's something that, at least here in Massachusetts, is extremely difficult. And it's not because a family may not have people who are willing to help. We've, as for an example, had family who was very, very supportive and was available. A lot of our family is local, but we had issues with finding childcare for our foster son when we had him, because the state is so stringent, and honestly, the wheels of bureaucracy move so slowly that only certain people can be approved to watch your child. So, it was one of those things where you couldn't just be like, oh, well, so-and-so can come over and watch them for a little while we do this. No, that's not the way that it works. And, so that's one of the challenges that foster families, at least in Massachusetts, face. Especially, it's especially frustrating when you have family who's ready and available, but they are still in the process of getting approved. So anyway, that's a side tangent that just came to mind, talking about the child care of Grogu. So beyond that, obviously, getting back to the Mandalorian, this all culminates in an adoption, you know, and so there is this really cool moment where Din Djarin, quote unquote, officially becomes Grogu's father.
Grogu is my apprentice. He is no longer a foundling. Add him to the song.
He is too young to speak, so he is too young to take the creed. He must remain a foundling.
If his parent gave permission, couldn't he then become a Mandalorian apprentice?
Yes, but his parents are far from here, if they're even alive.
Then I will adopt him as my own.
This is the way. Let it be written in song that Din Djarin is accepting this foundling as his son. You are now Din Grogu, Mandalorian apprentice.
This is the way.
Well, while we're on not quite on the subject, but one of the earlier examples that I gave with Din Djarin was that he's kind of feeling around the dark a little bit for what is the right thing to do. And I think that you look at the Ghost Crew and you look at, obviously Hera is that maternal figure, and Kanan Jarrus is that paternal figure. But I think especially Kanan has a harder time with that. And obviously there's more of a focus on that because he is trying to train Ezra as well. But, you also look at, there are all kinds of family dynamics involving like Sabine. And, there are moments where Kanan is also having these realizations of what it means to be a parent and what it means to be a more connected part of that Ghost Crew family. And there is a real great moment when he's training Sabine with the Darksaber, where that really seems to come into focus for him.
But no, this family will stand by you no matter what you choose.
Now, of course, Sabine has some other family dynamics that are going on that are also reflective of real world family dynamics, in that she has biological family, living biological family, and so she feels at times torn, between her old family and the newfound family that she has. And I think that's a real thing, especially for kids who have relatives, family, even parents who are still around, but they're not part of their life for whatever reason, or they have a different dynamic where they're in a foster situation, or they have been adopted, but they still know that they have these biological parents, these biological siblings, maybe, other relatives that, it's a struggle. And in a similar way, you look at Ezra, who also has these hard family dynamics. And for Ezra, it's that trauma, that loss, because he lost his family, his parents. What the Empire did to his family was a trauma. And that's something that is also really reflective in a lot of cases dealing with foster care. In addition to the trauma that they may have experienced in the home that resulted in them being in the system, being removed from your home and being removed from your family in and of itself is a trauma. And that's something that Kanan has to kind of, the entire Ghost crew honestly kind of has to come to understand that this is a wait for Ezra. And Ezra has triggers. There are moments like Empire Day is a hard day for him. I think that Rebels does a great job of looking at a lot of these different dynamics and really, you know, again, Kanan is feeling that sense of, am I doing this right? Because on top of everything else, he's trying to train Ezra. At one point, he tries to, find another master for Ezra because he's afraid he's not doing it right. And so, there are a lot of those struggles. Each of these people who are part of this family are having their own individual struggles, and there are struggles that the combined family have that are sometimes based off of all these individual pieces. So I think it's a great look at what a found chosen family, the dynamics that are really complex, in those kinds of scenarios. As much as you love these people, these are some really complex situations that you have to deal with. Now, another show that really kind of accentuates the family situations, and again, those feelings of, am I doing this right? I don't know what I'm doing. It's the Bad Batch, and especially Hunter. Hunter feels a responsibility to the squad in general because he is the leader of the squad, but especially you throw Omega into that. And really early on in the series, similar kind of thing to what Kanan did with Ezra in trying to find him a new master. He thinks that what's best for her is to try and protect her. And, there's that initial instinct. Oh, I got to protect the kid and put the kid somewhere safe. A lot of what was driving that sentiment for Hunter was his lack of experience with this. He had been a soldier forever. He didn't know how to deal with a child. And so, still looking out for the best interest of Omega, or what he thought was the best interest for Omega, obviously she stays, and the bonds that they grow end up being pretty deep.
This is where I want to be.
Tell you the truth, kid, I guess I've got a lot to learn too. If this is where you want to be, then this is where you'll stay.
So obviously he comes to realize what Omega means to him and what Omega means to the entire squad. Now, one of the things that I really find interesting, and it's also something that I think is reflective in some familial relationships, is the way that people view each other. Throughout the series, Omega is always referring to the rest of the squad as her brothers.
Why do you trust him so much?
Because he's my brother.
Brother? Him?
They all are.
You're lucky.
But meanwhile, the rest of them view her as their kid. So it's a really interesting dynamic here.
I made my choice, Hunter. I want to do more.
And we want to keep you safe.
You have. But I'm not a kid anymore. You don't have to worry about me.
You're our kid, Omega. You always will be.
And it's interesting because, Omega, she even has this moment with Crosshair where she kind of like is ribbing him a little bit and is, she calls him little brother because, she's like, yeah, I'm older than you are, little brother. And it's interesting. They obviously are more mature physically and in certain ways emotionally, maybe. though I don't know so much about that. I think they're both growing emotionally at the same time uh, because of the nature of what the clones were in the first place, which was soldiers and only soldiers. So they view her as their child, even though they are technically siblings, all being clones. It's a look at how different people, even in a relationship, may view each other differently, and how that can still be a working family dynamic. So it's just, that was one of the things that I've always found interesting about that relationship. And of course, most recently, Andor season 2 came out, but in Andor season 1, you have Cassian, who was adopted by Marva and Clem. Now, obviously, there's much more of the relationship with Marva in this series, but Clem obviously has had a big impact on Cassian. You'll notice when he becomes part of the squad that executes the heist, he uses a fake name, and the name he uses is Clem. Then there's another time when he returns before, that final that finale where he finds Clem's brick, and he's just, he's remembering. And it's a little moment, but it's Clem teaching him how to clean things, that they've salvaged. And it's such a simple thing, but when he sees that stone, he puts his hand on it. That's where his mind goes. And he's got this smile on his face. So clearly, this adoptive father, this foster parental figure meant so much to him that even when he's sneaking around, he finds this, and there's a moment of even comfort for him. And then, of course, you get that ending moment where it's really heartbreaking. Cassian finds out that Marva has died, and he's feeling the grief. The way that Marva cares about him is always she's showing it through her concern. Like, as much as she disapproves of some of the things that he's been doing, everything that she's saying is out of concern. She's worried about him. And I'm not sure that in the moment Cassian quite gets that, but this moment in the end really kind of tells the true story of how deep the love in this relationship was.
I couldn't get back.
You shouldn't be here now, Cass.
The last time I saw her, we argued.
Don't.
I told her I was coming back.
Stop.
I never should have left that morning.
Stop. She told me you'd say all this. Tell him none of this is his fault. It was already burning. He's just the first spark of the fire. Tell him he knows everything he needs to know and feels everything he needs to feel. And when the day comes that those two pull together, he will be an unstoppable force for good. Tell him I love him more than anything he could ever do wrong.
So these are just a few of the examples that I came up with that really illustrate the idea that whether it's kind of a fostering kind of situation or other kind of found family, there are so many different ways to look at family within the Star Wars universe, and it really reflects real life. I think that it's really relatable because there isn't a myopic view of family, and recognize that family takes on so many different shapes and sizes, and the way that it looks and the way that people come together is different. It just works so well, and it sees family in a very holistic way, And that's something that I think is very, very cool about Star Wars.
Is it over already? Oh, man!
So, on this May the 4th, of course, coming up this weekend, may the Force be with you. And also, keep in mind National Foster Care Month and organizations that support children and families. And so this week and this month, I'm not going to ask you guys to buy us a blue milk. Instead, I would ask that you consider donating to All Our Kids, which is the organization for which I am a member of the board of directors. Now, All Our Kids is an organization here in Western Massachusetts that supports and empowers foster families. And it does it in a number of ways. We have the Community Closet, which is a free store where we offer clothes and other essentials for foster families. Truthfully, there are times where, kids are always growing, and the little amount of monetary support that you get from the state doesn't come close to covering the expenses. And on top of that, there are times where if you are in an open foster home, you'll get a call and someone will say, hey, I've got a 6-month-old here that needs a place. And you might have a house full of clothes for a 3-year-old. So those are kinds of the things that the closet is there for. And it's also a place where people can come and feel welcome and, be with other people who understand kind of what they're going through. There's also the Resource Hub, which is an online kind of portal where we help people connect with services and resources that they need. There's also all kinds of community events that we have, usually at least one a season, where people can come together, people who are in the foster and adoption process, which is a process that can be really alienating. So this really helps people feel a sense of community, feel that they're not alone, and understand that there are other people who are going through the same things that they are. And sometimes it comes right down to even like venting sessions, or just even having a place where things feel normal. You're with people who are going through similar things, and it's normal. It's understood. So those are some of the things that can really help. And it doesn't matter. You can have the best family support in the world. You can have the best friends support. We had a ton of support when we were fostering. But it's just something a little bit different when you're in it. And you can say that about a lot of things, but this is one of them. When you're in it, it's just different. And so being able to connect with people who understand is really important. Now, what makes Western Massachusetts really kind of a special place when it comes to need? Well, let me put it in perspective a little bit for you. In Massachusetts, normally there's probably between 8,000 and 9,000 kids in the foster care system. Now, there's usually only between 5,000 and 5,500 licensed foster parents. And that ratio is even worse in Western Massachusetts. In those 4 western counties of the state, there are more than double the amount of children in foster care than there are homes and parents for them to go to. So basically, All Our Kids works to meet and bridge the gaps in the support systems that currently exist and try to make things easier, because one of the most challenging things is getting foster families, and not only getting foster families, but retaining foster families. So if you are interested in supporting All Our Kids, we would greatly appreciate it. And you can find more information at fosteringaok.org. And I appreciate you taking the time to listen. And hopefully this moves you to either help out All Our Kids or help out an organization or a movement related to foster care and adoption in your area. And that is going to wrap this episode of the Mazda's Musings podcast. As I said before, I hope you have a great May the 4th, and may the Force be with you. And one of the ways that you can show your appreciation to us and say, may the Force be with you back, is by spreading the word, by leaving a rating or review on your favorite podcatcher. Those good ratings and reviews help us, bump up in the rankings and the algorithms that make it easier for people to find this podcast and become part of this community. You can also connect with us on social media. There's the Mazda's Musings podcast Facebook page. We're also on X, Threads, and Instagram at Mazda's Musings Pod. We're on TikTok at Mazda's Musings Podcast, and you can also find us on Blue Sky. And if you want to know more about the podcast, you can go to mazdasmusings.wordpress.com. And while you're there, you can find out more about the podcast, find past episodes, find all the ways to connect with us, including our email address, which is mazdasmusings@gmail.com. While you're there, you can also sign up for our newsletter. Now, the newsletter will give you kind of a quick rundown on what's going on with the podcast and things that we find interesting. We'll tell you about the upcoming episodes, about anything that happened in past episodes that you might have missed. We'll also shout out other podcasts, and we'll let you know about other things that we find interesting, like contests or sweepstakes or other news. Basically, anything we find interesting, we're going to pass on to you in the newsletter because you'll probably find it interesting because you're subscribing to our newsletter. So that's just one way that we help stay connected with you once a week in your inbox. Now, as I said, in lieu of buying us a blue milk, we would love it if you would donate to all our kids by going to fosteringaok.org. And you'll find the donation information right there. As always, thank you to everybody for listening. Thank you for all of your support. In whatever way you decide to support us, it's very much appreciated. So I hope you have a great weekend and a great week, and may the Force be with you always.